Well, 2020 has finally come to an end, and that means it's time for one last rankings report for the year. We kind of take a look back at the big movers and shakers on the year. Gorgeous George Garcia with me as always. And let's just jump into it, George. I want to start out in the heavyweight division. Really, the big mover there was Ciryl Gane, and kind of an interesting year for him because he wasn't the most active, but the fight that he did have, that he finally got to have through no fault of his own, was a big one, and he delivered in a big way. He started out the year unranked, moved all the way up to number 8.
Yes, he had a big 2019 with the 3 wins, but those 3 wins, none of them were the likes of what he faced in 2020. 1 year later, basically, from his last fight in 2019, he faced Junior Dos Santos, a former champion who still held his position after all these years because he's had so many big wins and he's also reigned as champ. You get past Junior Dos Santos, you're moving, especially if you're undefeated, because there's nothing to really hold you back. Huge fight for him to beat the great Junior Dos Santos.
Yeah, a big one for him. He took a big leap up. And look, if I'm not mistaken, 2021, there's a chance that he could go even higher, right? I mean, this is a guy that's definitely on the way up.
Exactly. Now you're hearing about what, hey, would you even fight Ngannou? I think that was posed to him. And of course he would fight Miocic if the opportunity presented himself. But all those names, Blades, everybody that's ahead, Lewis, I'm sure Gane will be matching up with at least 2 of those in 2021.
Big opportunity for him. Let's move to the light heavyweight division. It was actually over in Bellator where we had a massive mover. Deannimkov, honorable mention to start the year, finishes up at number 4, way up at the top of the list, and kind of a similar path there, right? Not the most active of years, but the shot that he had, he made it count.
Right. Now he gets the benefit of being at least in a division where they have tough fighters over there. The light heavyweight division, Scott Coker will argue that they got the best one on the planet. Look, he defeated Philippe Lenz, who then wound up doing great things over at PFL, Liam McGarry, but the Phil Davis one in 2018 put him on the map. Okay, what you got after that? Well, we don't know because he only fought once in 2019 against Carvalho, a former champ at the middleweight division, but still, was Davis kind of like an upset? What do we got here? Nope, it wasn't, because then he got to Ryan Bader, who that might have actually contributed to the lack of activity for Nemkov, because Bader was also busy doing a Grand Prix of his own. So things just move a little bit slower, but when he did, we had to reward him with that big move.
Yeah, no question, a big move. And, sometimes it's hard for fighters outside of the UFC to really maintain those high rankings because they're not necessarily getting the level of competition. But George, you touched on it. The light heavyweight division, now, make the argument if you will. I mean, I think it's a fun argument to have. There's a chance that he could maybe even move up or stay there if he's racking up wins, right? Because Bellator is full of quality light heavyweights.
Yeah, including AJ, who left as a top 3 guy when he was with the UFC. So, connecting the dots makes it a lot easier when a lot of the guys have fought in the UFC and have had success in the UFC. Davis won a belt. He beat him. Bader was the champion. He beat him. And then, yeah, with Romero coming over, Mousasi, who's a former Strikeforce light heavyweight champ, if he were to move up, that would be a nice skin on his wall. Yeah, Romero, AJ. I mean, there's a lot of them. Corey Anderson, he came within 1 fight. He's the one that lost to Blachowicz, which got Blachowicz the shot to the title. So he's up there as well.
No question. By the way, you mentioned Blachowicz. Would be remiss without mentioning him. He started out the year as number 12. He finished at number 2, but of course he's the UFC champion as well. And depending on what happens with John Jones, you think you could potentially see Blachowicz move to number 1 if Jones does make that move to heavyweight like he's been teasing, although he hasn't really actually made it yet. So we'll see how all that plays out in 2021. Yep. Want to look at the middleweight division now, a name that I know you and I have had our eyes on for a while, a fun name, but one that finally got the wins he needed to get recognized, and that's Marvin Vittori. Marvin Vittori started out the year unranked. He finishes at number 8. I mean, I think that guy would fight every other weekend if they let him. Had some trouble getting big bookings, but he got a couple of matchups, and he really capitalized on the last one especially.
Definitely. For a while there, he was just known as the guy that gave Israel Adesanya the toughest fight. They fought to a split decision a few years ago. And then he started rebuilding himself, getting some wins. Then, of course, some struggles there in Jacksonville, I believe, where the fight with Roberson fell through. Then eventually got his hands on Roberson. Won that one, but it was the big one against Joker Hermanson. Similar to Ciryl Gane, hey, now you beat somebody that's, highly ranked. We're going to make that move for you. That's what Vittori did.
Yeah, and listen, I'll be interested to see how 2021 plays out for Vittori as well, because that middleweight division is absolutely stacked, right? But it does feel like there's kind of like an old guard and a new guard, right? A lot of those middleweight studs are kind of grizzled old veterans, we'll say, that may be nearing the tail end of their career, and it feels like this is part of this kind of youth movement, this fresh talent that's coming in to the middleweight division.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin Holland got the benefit of the Jacare win, and Chris Weidman, he's also an old guard. Luke Rockhold, whoever he winds up fighting, same thing. They're going to be tested against the young cats. They either hold on and say, not yet, young fella, I still got gas in the tank, or they basically put them over, to use a wrestling term, pro wrestling term.
Yeah, you touched on Kevin Holland, by the way. He started out as unranked. He finished the year at number 11. And who knows, that guy might fight 8 times in 2021. We'll see. He's in kind of that same position that you said there, kind of needing that signature win, right? But it's very clear that he's going to have some signature fights coming up next, because there's a lot of hype around Kevin Holland. Now I want to talk, for one last in the men's divisions, I want to look at welterweight, because there was one massive move there. And I'll just say, Gilbert Burns. The guy starts out the year as unranked. Finishes at number 4. Obviously, we know he's vying for a UFC title here very soon, so he could even shoot up from there. But a guy that got his work done early in the year, right? Things didn't necessarily pan out exactly the way he wanted, but man, he was on a roll early in the year, and he capitalized on that to make a big move up the ranks. For sure, and Gilbert Burns basically took the blueprint of Kevin Holland, although he did it before Kevin Holland. But Kevin Holland, a lot's been said. We didn't mention him here because he's going to be up for other awards, but he did 5 fights in 210 days, which is remarkable, along with that top 10 win in Jacare that I mentioned. Well, Gilbert Burns, had he fought Kamaru Usman and won, he would have had 5 wins as well within not necessarily the same calendar year, but within 12 months. But, of course, that fight fell through. George Masvidal steps in. But, yeah, he was busy since last August, went 4-0. 2-0 of 2 of those fights were in 2020, but they were massive. Maya, who was kind of like that long-time gatekeeper, are you a contender? You got to get past Maya. Well, he did. And then, of course, he caught Tyron Woodley coming off a couple losses since he had his awesome title reign as well. So Gilbert Burns, man, amazing year. Yeah, impressive to say the least. And if he wins, you got to think he vaults straight to number 1 if he's able to unseat Kamaru Usman, who's just been tearing through people right now. I cannot wait for that fight. That's going to be a big one. A bunch of great fights lined up in 2021. Yeah. Let's kick it over in the women's division. A name that I think probably wasn't on a lot of people's radar to start the year, but should be now. Juliana Velasquez over in Bellator. Now, we had her at number 10 to start the year, so she was certainly on our radar, but I don't think she was getting necessarily a lot of attention, a lot of love, despite the impressive record. But she capitalizes on her opportunity as well. Now, number 2 in the world, and, of course, a Bellator world champion. Yeah, first of all, again, being undefeated, definitely, you're going to put yourself on the radar a lot sooner because what you have is basically a win streak. So once you started getting to the names like Lara, Christina Williams, Bruna Ellen, I mean, it just kept adding to it. But look, she went up against an incumbent who had multiple title defenses. 5, I believe, did Ilima-Lei Macfarlane have. And she was also undefeated. So that was a big, big skin on her wall to go in there and win, stay undefeated, win the belt against the great incumbent like Ilima-Lei Macfarlane. Shoot straight up, man. Granted, the number 1 at the top of the heap is Valentina Shevchenko, and I'm not sure how we can get past that other than if Shevchenko were to drop a fight. But still, Juliana Velasquez, very impressive. Yeah, not a bad place to be. Number 2 in the world behind Valentina Shevchenko is not that bad, but unfortunately, you might have to get used to that position, right? Shevchenko looks like she's going to dominate for a long time. Hey, by the way, I did want to give a quick shout-out as well to Lauren Murphy as kind of an honorable mention. How about that? Yeah. Kind of a reinvention of her career, so to speak. Started out as an honorable mention. She finishes 2020 in the number 10 position, so great work from Lauren Murphy. And the last one I wanted to look at was strawweight. Yan Xiaonan, what a great move she made, kind of this on this edge of this growing Chinese talent pool as the sport continues to evolve and grow around the world. Started out the year as an honorable mention and finishes at number 6 in the world. Yeah, a lot of people are wondering, is she going to be Zhang Weili light? Is she as good? I mean, that's the star. But, man, I mean, look at the names she's put away because she's been in the UFC for a while, but she's just, a quiet professional athlete going about her business. But you start getting to Angela Hill, you start getting to Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and then, of course, Claudia Gadelha. I mean, those are the names right there. Now, that's a stacked division, the strawweight. So you're not going to ascend as quickly as some of the other divisions in women's MMA. But the UFC strawweight division stacked. She's doing her job. 13-1, excuse me. And I just see big fights for Panda. Completely agree. And that loss that she had was early on in her career, man. She's on an extensive win streak now, and the names that you rattled off in the UFC are pretty impressive. And listen, How great would it be if she were to get a title fight against Zhang Weili? And I don't know if it would happen, but I mean, we're trying to figure out how this world's going to evolve. I mean, she's still a fight, maybe two, but I'd say probably one away from it. But how great would that if we get the world back to normal again and we could have fans? How big would that be? China versus China in China for a UFC title. I can't imagine how big that would be for the country.
Yeah, and I wonder how close they are, and what the diplomacy, I guess, is for the Chinese athletes. We used to hear that a lot from the Brazilians. I'd rather not. And then eventually they would collide. It wasn't always the case. I mean, Vittori and Vanderlei, Vittori and Anderson Silva, but there was a lot that would just pay each other the respect. And I think it was because their country they were banding together and they were basically making their statement against the Americans who they had so many belts along the way. So I can't wait to see that fight. I think it certainly can happen because the foursome of Joanna, Andrade, and Rose has kind of been broken up. Andrade has gone to 125. Joanna's had a lot of shots. I think she's worthy of another one because of the great performance she had against Zhang Weili. Who doesn't want to see that one again? And then Rose, she seems to be in and out. I'm not saying that in any way they're not contenders, but somebody's going to break into that foursome. Tatiana Suarez, I thought, might be next, but she's had that neck injury, and I think it's been about close to 2 years since we've seen her.
Unfortunate, but as you said, man, absolutely deep division. How about this? A couple other names I can throw out there. Amanda Heba started out as an honorable mention. She finishes number 10, and she looks primed to make a push in 2021. And Mackenzie Dern, had all the hype in the world, but started the year unranked. It had the setback, and we didn't really know what we were seeing, and finishes at number 11. So she got on a hot streak as well. So what an absolutely deep division. I love that strawweight division. So listen, that wraps it up for 2020. Of course, we got a couple weeks off. Everybody could rest and relax and recharge a little bit, but we'll head out to Fight Island, and there's some massive fights out in Abu Dhabi that are certainly going to change everything up in the MMA Junkie rankings, and we'll talk about them all on the Rankings Report.